Hello, Javians, and welcome to the second episode of the Just About Community podcast. Today I have Rix Javix and Horror and Cats with me, and we will be talking about our experiences of toxicity in various gaming communities. So let's get started.
First of all, I think if we want to talk about toxicity in gaming, we should define what toxicity means to you.
Sure, I can go first. I've always thought it was gatekeeping. That's probably the biggest one for me. My example today will be the Soulsborne, Souls-like community, and I always thought that there was a big emphasis on for people personally, like the way I beat the game, the way I play the game is the way to play it, and any other way is either cheesing it or just not right.
Yeah, I definitely think that gatekeeping is one of the aspects of toxicity as well. I would also add that it's playing in a way which creates an unpleasant environment for other players. This is mostly in multiplayer or co-op games where you actually physically play together with other people, and behaving in a way or making comments which will lower the other player's self-esteem, and gatekeeping could be a form of this behavior.
Yeah.
Yeah, totally agree with that. I think what game was that again? Or
For me, just
yeah.
any of the FromSoft games, like the Dark
Oh, right,
Souls or
right.
Bloodborne, and yeah.
Hmm, interesting. Yeah, I mean, obviously, with E Online, it's a little bit different. We certainly have a huge swaths of the community that are, gatekeeping certain aspects of play styles over other aspects of play styles. That's been there since the very beginning with such a competitive and multicultural, you know, um, mix of players from all over the world, and how the game is set up. It's a very competitive environment by design, and we have just, I mean, pretty much every kind of toxicity that you can imagine has been present at one time or another, and others are present all the time. And that's the thing about toxicity to me, is that it comes in so many different types of so many different forms and levels of those too, because there are mild cases of intimidation, for example, or trying to intimidate someone out of a certain type of game style or play style or activity in the game that might be advantageous to you or your group. Or and then there's mid-tier sort of intimidations and hate speech, or just activities that are designed to more aggressively do that. And then we have sort of this ultra level that we've experienced throughout Eve's history, which is this designed to drive a person out of the game, or to intimidate them into quitting, or to bring down um, entire alliances and change the geopolitical landscape of the entire game. And there's been some, very. Uh, the thing about it is, in our history, especially early on in the game, some of these activities were actually lauded and used as examples of gameplay that was, if not directly, sort of endorsed by the gatekeeper, the game company or the community, but that sort of were used as examples of, this is how things, this is, it gets labeled a lot in Eve as the meta game, and the meta game gets promoted quite a bit as, part of it's legal. It's, anything goes kind of thing. And while that could often be true, there's an aspect of it that that can really override, the fun level for large groups of people.
I think I know exactly what you're talking about. It was almost like an ad campaign run by, like, we've got people who do this for their actual day job.
Right, right.
It's that big and it's that important to people, and they've got syndicates, and it was almost like a selling point for Eve. And I was thinking, that doesn't sound fun.
Right, right. And again, it's always a fine line. No, it's not always a fine line. Sometimes it's obvious. This is horrible and this is bad. But there is and that is why I think Eve is like such a hot bed for this type of conversation, because defining it within the aspect of the game where subterfuge and alt characters who belong to another main who might be your enemy in the game, who have infiltrated your corporation or your alliance. That is actually part of the game, and that's part of the hiding your identity and sneaking around and trying to bring down your enemy from the inside their own organization. I mean, that's kind of for some, that's a very fun game aspect, and I support that. I mean, it's part of the game. But again, those same tools that allow you to do those things and to create an environment which that's permitted and promoted, can also lead to other activities which are not so great, and which have been used, throughout history to really intimidate and hurt people, and expose their identity, online or publicly, or to harass them to the point where they may be considering some actions that might lead to their personal harm, and that's not good for anybody.
Yeah.
I think it's interesting that there are certain types of games or gaming activities where you expect some form or level of toxicity, like in competitive parts of any game. So if I see someone shouting nasty things at the other team in PvP, that's still not nice, but you kind of expect that, or some kind of disagreement between raid groups when they are competing in a duty for a world first clear. But it would be interesting to see if toxicity is maybe absent from a type of game which is considered to be like more aggressive and more dark, and on the other hand it's there in a relatively peaceful game as well.
I've heard that people get really, really riled up and into discussions on which villagers are best in the new Animal Crossing game.
Yeah, heard the same. I think too it's part of the act. So, kind of the actual game that you're playing, and then the community that surrounds it, right? So, I think even in single player games, or limited interaction games, that if you get out into the community that surrounds that, that's where I think that you can encounter, even in some of the more peaceful or lower count games, that even the game itself perhaps doesn't promote that sort of activity, but the community that surrounds it can, often turn vitriolic, or gatekeeping or intimidating in some way. Even to those who are, especially those, players who are probably more prone to, be more fragile, or not be as experienced in that environment as others are, and possibly don't know how to defend themselves or how to interact properly with that kind of community, can be very susceptible to that sort of. One of the reasons why I think it's so dangerous, and why it's so but prevalent, and that's also a cultural thing that's going on in the world right now, where we're all part of that, being suckered into this environment in which anonymity has become a field behind which many people hide their true intentions. And I think gaming is not absent from that, or anything special. it's seeped its way into gaming as well, or very well may have started there and seeped its way into the real world. I don't know which is which.
I remember playing Call of Duty like way back in the day. Um, Gears of War, just any back when I used to play competitive shooters online as part of my, you know, my search for fun with video games, and I ended up having to stop just because I personally don't handle losing to humans well. I can get my face ran across the floor, just get mopped by a Soulsborne boss 50 times, and I'm just like, well, maybe I'll get him next time. But as soon as somebody on the internet kills me, I'm just like, ah.
That's
So
interesting. Yeah, the difference between NPC death and player death, right?
yeah, I just can't for some reason it infuriates me. I don't know why. So I stopped playing online games, period, for my own like health.
Yeah, wow. So how is it in Final Fantasy Land? Is it something there too, or
Surprisingly, yes, because they say that Final Fantasy XIV's community is one of the nicest communities out there when it comes to MMORPGs. And in a ways, yes, but if you dive deep into it, then it's definitely not. And we had an interesting conversation with a friend on a community Discord, and they said that they think that the people who will behave toxic are the ones who are most passionate about the game because they are so invested in it and see their little corner of the game like some sacred ground that if anyone tries to do something differently than what is ideal to them, they will very quickly jump at defending it and not in a nice way.
Mm, yeah.
yeah, yeah,
And we tend to have two types of toxic people. One of them we call the toxic casuals who don't know too much about the game and they think that they know a lot about the game. So you would get someone in a dungeon running around like headless chicken, not using any mitigations when pulling the enemies, and you are trying to help them with advice, and the reply what you will get is you don't pay my sub. Like, chill, dude, I was just trying to
right.
help you.
You don't what? That's language I'm not familiar with.
So Final Fantasy is a subscription game. You pay monthly to play the
Oh,
game.
you don't pay my subscription.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. You're not my real mom.
Yeah,
Yes.
you're not paying my bills.
And I don't know where these people are getting this attitude from. If they are bringing it with them from other games, or they see someone in the community on a higher level, like in the high-end rating level, behaving this way, and they think that this is the norm. And I noticed this especially with people who clearly skip the story in the game and just focus on the fighting elements and want to level up very quickly, and they want to complete every duty as fast as possible. So you might get a newbie tank going at a slower pace through the dungeon, and the DPS, the damage dealer, suddenly will get impatient and run ahead and pull more enemies on the poor tank who is barely handling that one group which he already pulled. And this is definitely a behavior which I never understood, because does it matter if you complete the dungeon 5 minutes sooner? Not really.
I wonder if it's got anything to do with like players who get in there alone versus players who typically play with a crew. So like if you've got your crew and then you've got another random person, you don't have as much affinity for that. Like when I played Back for Blood, when it first came out, and I was playing with a friend, and we just wanted the other two people to be bots. But given how the online worked, we would get a random person in there every once in a while, and if they were just running around starting hordes, scaring all the birds and whatnot. They get down, we just leave them.
Right, right. Yeah, I've had that too.
So I wonder if that's plays into that mentality, like people not considering a stranger's struggles with their role, their tank role, as much as they would if it was one of their crew members. I don't even know if that's how the game
Or
works. I mean,
those are like min maxers, right? It's minimum effort, maximum benefit, right? So how to minimize the amount of time, the amount of effort, and get the maximum benefit from what you're doing in the game. Those people are very strange to me, but I typically play games for enjoyment and for challenge, right? To challenge myself and to get some enjoyment out of it. But then there are those. I mean, we have them as well, where it's just I'm going to watch all the tutorials I can and figure out what's the maximum benefit I can get for the minimum amount of effort to put into the game. Just very strange to me. But
see, I didn't define min-maxing like that. I guess I misunderstood what that meant, because when I say min-maxing, what I mean is I'm going in and looking at all the articles of clothing I have. So I'm in an area with a lot of actual toxic enemies, like in Bloodborne or something. So I'm like, I'm gonna put on this hat that has +2 poison resistance, and I'm gonna ditch the coat that doesn't have poison resistance, although it's gonna make me more That's what I thought min-maxing was.
oh, okay.
So that's what I've said that on my streams before. I guess I need to look up terms before I use them.
I think both of them works actually.
Probably, yeah. I think it actually works both ways.
Okay.
We definitely have this type of min-maxing what you just mentioned, and that's the other type of toxic player in the community, the toxic elitists.
Right, and then there's the credit card warriors too, who are coming in and buying all the really expensive armor and swords or spaceships or whatever, and then just jumping into the game fully outfitted and ready to go, and have never played it before. Those guys are fun too.
Luckily, you don't get to buy such equipment in Final Fantasy XIV, so anything what you can buy is cosmetics purely. But we often get the high-end raiders behaving in a very unpleasant way towards newbie players who are not that familiar with the job they are playing, who don't have the best equipment on, and you sort of understand this in the party finder when they set expectations towards the people who want to join that group to clear a high-end raid. But even there's a lot of unnecessary gatekeeping. So even if it's a practice party and not going for the kill, they will expect you to know the fight already. So it's very hard to find a true newbie group which will allow you to learn the fight as it goes and not expect you already to be prepared for every mechanics. But what I experience a lot when these people come to the daily duties, because they get their high-end currency from it which they can spend on gear, but the duty can be a level 15 first dungeon for someone who is just started the game, and they will play the same way they would be playing in their high-end content. So often not dodging the AoE damage, just standing in it because they want to put in one more attack on the boss, and expecting the healer to
it's
heal
your
that
problem
up.
now.
Yes, or the healer who comes from a raid not healing the people because they are focusing on damage, and if you stood in something accidentally, then your fault, you die.
Yeah, a lot of unique personal views on how the game should be played could pop up in any given random matchmaking party, I'm sure. Is the level evident in Final Fantasy? Like, if somebody joins and is it very clear that they're new before they've even started playing?
It is fairly clear because until you have certain hours of playtime in the game and reach a certain progression level in the story, you have a little sprout icon next to your name.
Oh, nice.
Okay.
What it
That-
doesn't show, and maybe they should implement something for this, that you can level every job on the same character. So it can be that you have been playing the game for 3 years and you are not a sprout already, but maybe you are trying healer for the first time. And people see that, oh, you are a high level character and you are not a sprout anymore. You finished the story, you have the latest gear on your DPS or whatever, but then they will expect you to play on the same level with a healer, and you might be learning that healer just now.
Right.
Yeah. I the best example I can think of that you get like as far as a team-based thing is when I played Apex Legends when it first came out a little bit, and then recently I was looking for a game that's free that I can do community streams with, so people who watch can just download on whatever console they happen to have and try and get in the same game with me. So I revisited Apex Legends on PC, and it doesn't just show like levels or anything. It shows how many kills you've gotten in your history. So I joined a team and we're talking about like 250 kills, 350 kills, and then I'm there with 0. And I'm like, don't because it's three person teams in Apex Legends, and I was like, don't despair too soon. This might be the one. I might get a kill this time.
You stand out like a sore thumb.
Yes, exactly. And I can only imagine that both these people were like, oh no, we've got a new guy.
In Eve, it's relatively impossible to tell. You can show info on a character and look up his employment or their employment history. But even so say random spaceship in space character, I look it up, and it shows that they started playing in March of this year. But even that's an assumption on my part, because they very well might be an alt character of another character who's played for 20 years, right?
Right.
The person who's actually running that character might be a 20-year veteran who's just pretending to be a new player. But it can be also a real new player. I mean, I do run into those from time to time, and because we do in my group we do actively, because we actively play evil people in the game, so we also actively have ways to temper that and be nice people in the game. But
Yeah. Well,
it's
it's a difference between role playing and actually being
a
an
decent
a-hole.
human being, right?
Yeah.
It's interesting that you mentioned role playing, because we did this in Lineage 2. That was a open world PvE PvP game, so you just pressed control and then you could shoot anyone you saw anywhere. And we funded a raid group with my friends, and we were the bad guys, so we went on to hunting people. And
Yeah.
that was the role play, so we would shoot anyone we saw on the field. And once we saw a little sprout character with just mining there nicely, and we said no, we can't, like, we were feeling so sorry for them. And they
We're
said
evil, but we're not effing evil.
We're not that evil.
and they said in the chat that I know who you are and I will fight you. So we were having a
Funny.
fist fight with this newbie character, and when they died, obviously, because even in a fist fight we were stronger, we resurrected them and we were having a good laugh. So it was clear that yes, we are shooting other players, and yes, this is a role play, but yes, we are also nice human beings behind those characters.
Right.
You almost did a little bit of scaling. Like they wanted to be in on the fun, but I'm sure they would have been much more upset if you just one shot them.
Probably.
Yeah.
So you like did some self scaling of your evil. Like we'll just hit you with fists.
And it turned out to be a quite nice event because half of the server in the end came together to hunt us down.
Ah,
That's
I
funny.
mean, eventually the people will rise.
I've actually had
I
that conversation in the game. Like, how evil are we exactly? Like, what? And I have other players ask me, like, Rick, how evil are we? Are we able to do this? Like,
are we chaotic
I think that's a
evil or
yeah,
are
or
we
neutral.
lawful evil? I and when I was playing Bloodborne is Souls like that doesn't have as frequent of invasions. There are only certain areas you can be invaded by other players, and there are people who just it's their whole life to go in, invade other people's worlds, and win PvP battles, and it's never convenient. Like you're never hoping it'll happen if you're somebody like me. And I was only invaded one time the whole time I played Bloodborne, and I could tell that they did some self scaling until I started to win, and then they were like, "Oh, okay, I'm gonna switch to my big sword," and then they just like pounded me into mush. But but yeah, there was there people who do the invasions typically have some kind of I don't know, I don't want to say perverted sense of honor, but it's like there is definitely a unique honor vibe you get from them. Like they bow, they wait until you see them before they'll attack, and then they do an emote or something just to be like, all right, the fight is on. I tried to run back to the bonfire and just turned away from them. I was like, no, go find someone else.
That's pretty fun.
But yeah, there was obviously some self scaling going on there. I got them down to half health, and then they were just like, okay, well, I'm not playing around anymore.
Right.
Did
Wow.
you experience yourself any extreme toxicity or something which would like make you think that you want to quit the game or stop that type of activity in the game because of the people?
Well, I can speak to that. I've like I said in the last podcast, I've in September, in a couple of weeks, I'll have been playing Eve online for 16 years now, and not just playing. I mean, I've also been a blogger, YouTuber, been very involved in Twitter and worked diligently on trying to get CCP to do other things like give artists access to their IP through officially licensed channels, and fought fights and been a very active and outspoken, sometimes soapboxer who has been putting myself out there. So I'm kind of an easy target. But I have had conversations with the local police department about swatting. Um,
Oh wow.
because we do believe that we would be a target for that sort of activity, and
Mm-hmm.
so that's something. I once had to have a similar conversation with the police department in Reykjavik, Iceland, because my wife and I were going to travel there, and we felt that we were potentially open to attack from a stalker that I had, who was stalking me not only online but threatening to stalk us in real life as well. Luckily,
Wow.
nothing came of that, but we were that concerned where we talked not only to CCP about it, but also the Icelandic police. And luckily, like I said, nothing ever came of it, and that all sort of died off. But we've also been the victim of two separate docs things where our private information, and this was back before I was really like had. I mean, for the last 10, 15 years, my over 10, 12 years since 2015, my identity, personally and as Rex, is the same. So there's no difference between me as a human being and me and Rex
Mm.
now. And primarily because we were doxxed twice on Reddit, our public information, bank accounts, social security numbers, addresses, phone numbers, all that stuff was opened up to the public.
think about quitting for sure.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, we took quick action, and the moderators, several of whom were friends of ours, helped us to pull that information as quickly as possible. But still, it was out there, and it happened to us twice. Um, so yeah, and I mean, literally right now, I could. I'm looking at all the icons for all the different Discord servers that I'm involved with. There are at least two or three of those that I could drop into right now and say something in certain channels and just get torn to pieces for saying whatever it is, even if it's something really nice. Um,
Sounds like
and
Twitter.
yeah, yeah, Twitter has turned into that too, right? There are definitely moments of that from a gaming perspective as well. Um, in game, we get intimidated quite a bit from a couple of larger groups who know that there's nothing we can do about them, and but I have to say most of the outright like the evil stuff, the really mean, intimidating, hate speech, um, the distortion of truth, the lies, the outright lies about your character, the besmirching of your character as a human being and as a person. Those types of things don't happen in game. They happen out in the community, primarily because in game it's pretty easy to just take screenshots of that activity and then pass that along, and then there's consequences for that. The CCP is pretty good about short-term, long-term, and permanent bans for things that are outside the EULA, that violate the terms of conduct. So they're pretty good about that. So we don't see as much, and the stuff in game tends to, be more subtle and hide behind the game mechanic. So,
Mm-hmm.
but when you tie those two things together, you can often see a common thread or connections between people or whatnot. So yeah, I have several folders on my hard drive that's just full of screenshots of that activity, just to keep a record of it.
A dossier.
Yeah, yeah. So I mean, pretty much every type of harassment that you can think of, that my wife and I have experienced it over the last 16 years. We often, and the funny part about it all, and I'll say this here, because I've never really talked about this publicly before, is that we're grown ass people. We're adults. I started playing. Again, I've been playing for 16 years, but I was in my early 40s when I started playing Eve. Primarily, as I said last podcast, because of my son, who was a 14 at the time. It was something we did together, and it's all his fault dragging me into this. But yeah, and but we have businesses. We're professionals. We have a career. We have lives. I have 4 boys that I had to raise. And taking this kind of abuse for a game is just something that I never, in my wildest dreams, imagined that I would have to do or would want to do. But having said all that, yeah, there were times along the way where we thought about pulling ourselves out of it, but the positivity and the friendships and the just the involvement of the community and our role within it has always been way more than the negativity. I mean, I'm talking about hundreds of times more. We get way more positivity and way more out of it in a positive manner than we ever get negative. And the negativity for us, especially, other than some of those incidents, which were a little concerning, but it's always been kind of a joke. We kind of, my wife and I laugh about it a lot. We tell stories to our friends who are not gamers, who just stare at us like we're making this stuff.
I am a gamer, and I'm thinking like, wow, you pay monthly to experience this?
Yeah. Well, actually, no. And full disclosure, since 2010, because I blog and I'm involved in the community because of my artwork and everything. There's a partnership program that I've been involved with where CCP does pay my subscription for.
At least there's that.
Yeah, at least there's that. But we pay in many other ways. I mean, we travel all over the world to conventions and and I do swag and I give back a lot to the community for other things. But yeah, it's but again, I wouldn't still be here if it wasn't worth it, and
Yeah.
it is worth it, and I think it's worth it because we have actually, and I won't take sole credit for anything that I say. Again, when you're telling a story, I get dinged for this too sometimes, where I'm telling a story on a podcast or something, and everybody's like, "Well, you're taking credit for it." I'm not. Anytime I say anything, there's a lot of people behind this, and a lot of people involved. But we have run out a lot of really, really, truly bad elements from the game as a community, and by standing up and not giving up, and giving up and walking away, or giving up and quitting, I mean, that's one response, and there's certainly merits to all of that, and everybody's situation is different. But for me, giving up and walking away is paramount to admitting that the other guy won, that the bullies have won, and it's really just not
Mm-hmm.
my character. Like, my character is just not um, ever been, even in real life, a person who would walk away from a bully. So it's tough
Yeah,
to do
same.
that in games as well. Yeah, and I don't think the
See,
bully should be allowed to win, right?
that is also that's exactly how I am in real life, and that's why I typically stay away from places where, like, I don't think I would ever start any kind of MMO. Like I said, I don't even play online competitive games, just because if I'm trying to avoid toxicity. That's why it took me so long to even start playing Soulsborne games, because my perception of the FromSoft ultra hard gaming community was that they are toxic. Like, I thought that if you put yourself online, like I streamed Bloodborne when I first played it. If you put yourself out there, you're going to get everybody in your chat telling you that you're doing stuff wrong, or that you suck, or just, you know, the usual, you're playing it a way that I don't play it, so you're wrong. And then, of course, I thought they would start arguing with each other in the chat, and it turned out that was not the case at all. Like, I
Mm.
had avoided these games for so long. Dark Souls came out in what, like 2011,
Yeah,
and I only just got around to playing any of these types of games last year. Uh, and everyone, like, I didn't experience one person who came in and had a negative attitude. People are really cognizant of spoilers for bosses. Like, they'll never tell you if there's a second phase to a boss unless you ask, because they want to see your face when
right, right. They
when the
want you to
boss.
experience it, right?
Yeah. um and they give tips, but they're never like, this is, I say never. I'm a smaller streamer, so I mean, if I was bigger, um I might have gotten a couple negative people in there,
Right,
but
right.
it's really been a kind of a shock. And that's so, after I beat Bloodborne, it was such a good experience that I I next played Timesia, and then I played Lies of P, and everybody's got their favorite little, those aren't FromSoft games, but they are in the FromSoft formula, where when you die, you lose whatever level up materials you had, and you have to get back to it. If you die again, you lose it forever, kind of thing. Um, Ultra hard bosses that you're meant to die to, you're meant to get beat over and over until you learn their patterns, and just it's the kind of game where, yes, you level up your character, but more so you're leveling up your skill level with it. I think that's kind of the key to these FromSoft and Souls-like games.
Right.
And people, yeah, people just really like to see,
That's awesome.
my impression, people love to see somebody getting into a game that they love. Like, this game is their thing. With each of them, there was always one person. Like, in the Bloodborne stream, there was one person who'd never missed a stream. It was their favorite game, and they just wanted to see it experienced through new eyes. Um,
Awesome.
and, and that's the vibe I get. And I just had it totally wrong. I mean, there definitely are toxic people. I've seen posts, but I didn't actually experience any of it. I only got really great fans who are just excited to see somebody even 8 years after the game came out. I think Bloodborne was 2015, and I played it last year for the first time. And yeah, it was probably one of the most popular streaming series. It was 10 episodes, took me to beat the game.
That's
And
awesome.
yeah, one of the funnest things was finding out that it's not like this is the hardest boss in the game. People have their own versions of the hardest boss in the game. Maybe it just kind of goes against the grain of their play style. Like if you're big on parrying and this is a boss that requires dodging,
Right,
it
right.
it
Oh,
got
I
it's
had that too. Yeah.
yeah, it sticks you a little bit. And so one of my favorite comments was, why do you get slapped around by the easy bosses but you beat the hard ones first shot? And I'm like, I don't
Right.
know what's easy or hard. It's just like this one is very parryable, and I've got the parry timing dialed in, so it's not as hard for me. But the other ones, the dodging ones with like magic and stuff, I think slapped around is a good way to phrase it.
I definitely had that when I was making my guides for Final Fantasy 16 and doing the different trials where you had to face that icon uh, with its own skills, and each icon had a different type of play style. So there were some which were very much my kind of style, the casting and ranged attacks, and I was breezing through them on first try. And then the one which many people love, Titan, it's more like a parrying and blocking play style. I was sitting there for 6 days trying to record that small trial because I was constantly failing. And
And people who have all specced out or practiced on parrying and blocking, they're just like, why is this so hard for you?
and when I look at my guides, which are the more popular ones, it's interesting to see one which I completed on first try to be one of the most popular guides, because by the looks of it, a lot of people prefer another playstyle and they are struggling with the one which I was good at.
Yeah.
Yeah, makes sense. And everybody's perspective is different too, and their own experiences are, their own. It's hard to be a generalist when you make assumptions about things. You're falling into a trap, right? That's also
Mm-hmm.
its own problem. I struggle with a couple of things that I struggle with, and that was misrepresenting how horrible Eve Online is when I'm hearing or guest talk about Soulborn, and I may be because I also struggle with the fact that maybe a lot of this is my own fault in a way because I am who I am. So do certain types of people attach themselves or do the things to me in order to gain notoriety or get written about in my I I used to the my blog, for example, was always going to be a journal of my adventure, and so I would write about everything that happened to me. And over the last few years, I've stopped kind of doing that because I think there was a certain element of certain types of players who would do things in the game in order to be written about. Does that make sense? And sort of
Yeah.
became
Come,
kind of a
becoming a
magnet.
king.
Right,
Your
right.
self-fulfilling prophecy of being attacked.
Right, right, because that sort of gives them that bit of a rush, right? Look what he did. Look what we made him do. Look what, and I get that a lot too. It's like, what in the game something will happen, and somebody will say, "Well, I'll go blog about it now, or tweet about it, or and it's
It's
like,
it's
yeah,
it's like people who pop into live streams just to troll.
just
They
a troll, right?
yeah, they want to
To
they
draw
want
attention to
to be
themselves.
yeah, and see if they can break your cool.
Yeah, I mean, it's almost like real world encounters with celebrities or people of note. And look what I did, and I have a story to tell now where so it's such and such was having dinner, and they talked about me on this podcast the next day or something.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
A
I
little
I saw
slice.
that I saw that picture of you with the gunny. Jealous.
Oh, right. Yeah. No, that was awesome. Yeah. And that, well, actually, now that I think about it, that story I just told of somebody interrupting dinner and then talking about that was a story from Just About. That was one of the comments or the submissions to that same thread was somebody had didn't want to interrupt Mel Gibson. That's who it was.
Mm.
And that was a great story. And it resonated with me because just a very long time ago. I think he was here in the city shooting a movie, and I was just standing. I was sitting on a wall outside the set watching them. Oh, they were doing. They were. It was spring, but it was cold out, and they were doing snow. They were making snow, and so I'm just sitting there, and some guy comes walking up to me, and he says, "Do you have a cigarette I could borrow?" And so I said, "Sure." So I gave it, and it turned out to be Mel Gibson, and he sat on the wall with me,
Oh,
and we sat and we had a cigarette together, and it didn't really talk or anything, and it's just the weirdest things like that happen sometimes. But yeah, I don't know.
no.
Yeah, I think that there's a certain give and take to toxicity where defending. So, Hora, we were talking a little bit earlier about, and it's resonated with me about bullies, right? But I think often that standing up to bullies is also its own sort of magnet for more bullies, right? So,
Mm-hmm.
if you declare yourself to be a person who stands up to bullies, then you're really kind of asking for more bullies to
To
come at
test
you
it.
to test that theory, right?
Yep. Yep.
Yeah, I don't know exactly how you do that without asking for it. But you just have to kind of stick to your guns and stay steadfast, I guess.
Yeah. Because of my job, I've done some trainings on like de-escalation and whatnot. So typically, and again, I desperately try and avoid scenarios where I have to be any kind of combative, uh, just because once I start, I'm like, well, can't stop. I'm either putting this down or worse. So yeah, like I moved to rural Oregon. I live on the top of a mountain. I just try and stay away from people.
You got away from people is what you did.
Because it's I don't want to be the guy who people call when I used to go out, like karaoke and whatnot. People would always kind of, if there was an altercation somewhere, they would always like let me know, and I'm like, don't let me know, because now I have to pay attention and do something about it. Oh
Yeah.
yeah, I just want to live a quiet life.
I have to say
Exactly.
that I'm also the best to remove myself from this environment type of person
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
because
Right.
there's just so much happening in my life anyway. I really don't need that toxic environment in a game, and
Mm-hmm.
it almost made me quit Final Fantasy when I barely got started. I started playing the game because of the story. A friend dragged me into it, and then he left me there on like level 20, and I was on my own from there. So I said, I will just finish the story and I will leave this game. I don't want to play with other people anymore. And in one of the dungeons, I was playing healer, and I come from MMORPGs where healers don't have a damaging toolkit. Your job is just to heal and take care of the party. So I was standing there in the dungeon, waiting for the tank to take damage, and then I will heal them. And suddenly I see it in the party chat that they are shouting at me, do something or you will get kicked from the group. And I didn't know what was wrong. I had no idea. And said, like, what you want me to do? So I started to press my one damaging spell, which was available, and then they stopped shouting at me. So I said, okay, if this is what you wanted, that this is what you get. And later I learned that yes, in this game healers have a very prominent damaging toolkit, and you are supposed to be doing damage.
Oh,
And
right.
especially in that dungeon, when you bring the enemies under the light of a crystal, you take very little damage there. So I was literally doing nothing because the tank was not taking any damage. and they didn't like that. But I didn't know that. I was waiting there like, oh my god, some big hit will come soon because the tank didn't take any damage yet.
Wow.
Oh, he's gonna get hurt eventually, and I'll be there.
So it was especially a hard situation because I was yelled at something when I didn't know that I was doing something wrong. And instead of explaining to me that, hey, I won't take any damage here, you can use your damaging spells, I won't die, it's alright, they just decided to yell at me. And this experience, when I came back to play the game after a short break, made me really reluctant to play healers because I was scared of constantly messing up. And
The most thankless class is always the healer, isn't it?
Yeah.
I know from other games that I am a good healer. So my partner started as a tank, and then I swapped from my DPS to be healer, and we did all the content in this setup, which was very nice. And we joined a raid group, and that raid group again was not nice experience because instead of teaching me how you meant to be healing in a raid, they were very belittling, and
They just were like, you better already know, or else go away.
they were not patient when I needed a bit more time to understand the mechanics in the raid, and I was doing like 1% less damage than what they were expecting from a healer, so they kicked me from the group. And they
Oh.
didn't care that I had to heal more because my co-healer was only focusing on damage. And this was meant to be a friendly guild raid group. So imagine that after this experience I didn't dare to touch any kind of raid groups, because if this was the friendly group, then how is the not friendly group going to be?
Right. Right.
Right. I think that's probably, unless somebody has more to say, I think that's probably a good transition into how to fix it, like how
Yeah.
to combat the toxicity. And for me, like just having one super positive into the playthrough person per, like, for Tymesia, for Lies of P, for Bloodborne, there's always at least one person who, like, this is my game, I know everything about this game, and I'm here if you want to ask me questions, but otherwise I'm totally fine just enjoying watching you experience it for the first time. And so it's like one person versus, or with one person is, I think, the best way to make a difference. Like, you be the hand that reaches out and welcomes somebody, and that's going to make such a difference, because I think the gatekeeping mostly happened, like, again, like EVE Online. I don't think I would ever touch EVE Online because I have a perception of, like, well, I just don't like playing anything with competitive against people because I take
Right,
it too seriously. It's just part of it's that, and that's on me.
Trust me, not everyone's experience is as dark and evil as mine has been. But yeah, that's not normal.
So yeah, I just I don't know what if you see somebody new, you being the one to open the gate where other people are trying to keep it closed, or
Yes.
I think that's probably the best way to, even if you're not a super, like, I don't have much social media, just about as the most social media I have. I have a Twitter so I can post things to just about for bounties and whatnot. I don't actually do social media unless you count YouTube as social media, which I guess some might, but
It is. Yeah, I totally agree. For us, I play pirate in EVE Online, and I represent a large pirate group. So we do like really evil things. We destroy other people's ships. We loot their stuff that they've worked hours on. I mean, it can be very confrontational, but even so, we have a laissez-faire sort of attitude about and a code that we live by, where I'll tell you a story. Yesterday, I had a perfect example of this. I found a spaceship who was doing something he shouldn't be doing. He was AFK outside of a station, just sitting there in a spaceship. And I knew he was AFK because it wasn't moving. He wasn't doing anything. And so I locked him up so that he would get a sort of, if he has audio on, he'll get a scream. There's like a sound effect that happened. Sure enough, he logged back in and docked up. And so I started convoing him in local, and I'm like, dude, I see that you're like a week old. You just got into the game. He's like, yeah, I'm not a experienced player. I just started playing. I didn't know what I was doing. So, I spent 10, 15 minutes talking to him about, why that was a bad idea and why he should never do that again, and he took it very well. Sometimes they do, sometimes they don't. Some people get very
Feisty.
defensive, yeah,
Yeah.
defensive and protective about what they're doing. But it was a good interaction, and I have probably half a dozen or a dozen of those a week with individual players, or they will ask me like, what could I do better? How could I fix what happened, and how do I avoid that?
The pirate role play on pause to just kind of reach out and be like, "Yo, if you go AFK with your ship, people not as nice as me are going to
Yeah,
ruin
exactly.
your
Are
life."
going to take advantage of you, and I will if you mess up. I'm going to also do that, but I want you to know that you can reach out for advice, and we'll help. And that's sort of our always been our attitude is that we want everyone in the game to be good at it. EVE Online's hard enough, and it gets a bad rep, I think, in many ways. And I'm certainly not helping it today by telling you guys. But it also is a game in which it's very difficult, and we don't get a lot of. We're not getting millions of players, and every one of them that starts is kind of precious. And we have systems in place now for that, which we didn't have, for long. And it's getting easier for young players to get into the game, but it can be tough and challenging, especially when you're looking at players like myself or others who are even in it longer than me, who have, it seems like an insurmountable hill to climb, right? And it's not really. And so I think anything that we can do to help make that interaction less tragic and less
Yeah.
devastating to, And there
I,
are times when I will actually pay for the spaceship that I've blown up, you know. Like here's some is, go buy yourself another one and try to do better next time.
okay. I can tell you that I would not take that nicely. I would be like, "Wow, okay."
Yeah, yeah. It doesn't always go over very well.
But yeah, I think to combat like just being when people are trying to hold a door shut, being the one to stick your foot in so someone else can get through is probably the best way to, it's
From
like
an individual standpoint, yeah, I think so.
yeah,
From a player to player, right? But I
yeah,
think it's also critical that the gaming company itself, that the whoever's adminning the game, that there's a standard that they adhere to, and that it's relatively available to everyone, and that it's understood what denotes bad behavior and what denotes good behavior. And I think that it's incumbent upon each gaming company to stick to those principles and to provide avenues for address for when those principles are broken, right?
hmm
And to make that as easy as humanly possible and as fair and judicious as humanly possible within the context of the individual gaming community and what its own problems are. I think that's very critical.
yeah. With games like Eve, that must be such a hard balance to reach because you've got it's literally about making gangs, basically companies. Is that what they're called in Eve?
Corporations, yeah, corporations and
Corporations.
alliances.
Like you role play, you role play as pirate. That's
Right. Yep.
objectively the bad guy, like you were saying before. Objectively the bad guy, and it's part of the game. So that's just supposed to be such a hard balance to reach. Like Final Fantasy, Lana, I think that's all co-op, right? There PvP even in Final Fantasy.
Yes, there is PvP, but it's not open world PvP, so you
Okay,
need to sign
Right.
up for specific PvP duties, and
okay,
there are small scale PvPs where two groups of 5 people will hit each other. It's like a capture the flag type of PvP,
yeah.
Okay.
and the
So,
other
like if you're there, you wanted to be there. It's not like you're
yes,
trying to
yeah,
do something fun in a spaceship, but then some like 6 ships show up and blow you up.
yeah. So
Yeah, those bastards.
if you sign up for PvP, you signed up because you want to be there. And the
Right.
other one is like a bigger scale PvP, which there is a story behind it that basically it's a training operation between the three military groups of the three big cities. So you are helping them on their training exercise.
Okay.
And that's with 72 people split into three groups. And
Wow,
it, it,
battle
it
royale.
can be quite fun. So I like it mostly. What I don't like that there are a lot of scripters and cheaters in PvP,
Mm.
and especially in the small scale PvP, it can be quite obvious when someone is using scripts to auto block your attacks and all that kind of things.
Oh
So,
man, yeah, that's bad.
and
Oh,
it's
that's the worst.
doesn't look like it's something what at the moment they can do anything about.
Oh,
Mm.
right. Yeah, and then the other challenge for a company too, and I know CCP runs into this too, and is the difference between what happens inside and what happens outside. And obviously, they can't be police to the world, and no one can really. So again, like I said, a lot of this stuff, starts in game or has in game impetus, where one group wants to take down another group or whatever. But a lot of the effort that goes into that deep outside into the community at large, onto Discord, onto forums, onto Twitter, onto emails, onto and the no gaming company can really be expected to police that world as well. So that's where it gets really very challenging for address these problems.
Yeah, I mean, I guess you can't really expect. I imagine there's probably something in the user agreement that says, like, don't. But I mean, what are they going to do if it comes to their attention that somebody's on Twitter doxing people or on Reddit?
Well,
That's a
we,
matter
we,
for law
we yeah, I
enforcement
mean,
at this point.
it is, and that can be done, and there is actually avenues for that as well, where there have been incidents where things escalated to a point where local police or law enforcement have been
Hmm.
brought to the attention of. There's also been incidents where outside of the game, but inside of the community event, for example, like on Twitch or at FanFest, certain things have happened that also required address, and those were taken care of too because they were um, in sponsored events or
Hmm.
sponsored Twitch channels, that are even though they're not in the game, they're probably authorized by or participated with, and there's been
Yeah.
some famous examples of that as well.
I wonder what the first time EVE Online caused a law enforcement reaction. They must have been like, I'm sorry, this is a video game? The
Right?
people are
Back 20 years ago, can you
I
imagine?
are
Yeah,
you
there was
saying
no internet really. I mean, no
right?
social media, and it was all new. The poor police,
The
who
police
had
are
to
like
deal with
this
this.
people are doing what over this
What?
video game?
There's stories where there was a story way back when I first started that at one time somebody was expecting a big space flight down in Nullsec, and the largest ship in the game is the Titans, and someone knew of a Russian player who was going to bring their Titan to the battle, and someone else knew who that person was in real life. And prior to the battle, they went over to their, and I don't know if this is true or not. This is pure just uh, almost old
Like
wives' tale. But yeah,
folklore at
this is.
this point.
But apparently, right before the battle, someone went over to his house and cut his internet cable, so he didn't have internet.
Oh my god. Wow.
So he was not able to bring his Titan to the fight. I don't know if that again. Don't know if that's true or not. There was a moment in my life where my son came home from school and he said, "I think so and so at school is the Titan pilot for so and so alliance." And I went, "No way." He went, "Yeah, and I know where he lives." And I'm like, "No, no,
Nope,
we're
we're
not
not
doing.
doing that.
We're not doing that."
I could get him, Dad. I could get
Yeah,
him right now.
I don't think
Ah, dude.
that's not good.
I'm wondering if it's also a cultural thing because in Final Fantasy XIV we have different data centers, so there's different servers for people playing in Japan, in Europe, America, and
Mm.
Australia,
Yeah.
and there's a visibly different culture on all of
Mm.
these servers. And I tried some raiding in the cross data center test, which was held on the Oceania data center, and that one has a small Japanese population as well, because they
Right.
used to be together with the Japanese players, and I guess who had friends from the Australian side, they moved to the new data centers. And it was a completely different experience than what I experienced on my server. People were patient. They were explaining in party chat at the beginning of the duty what we're gonna do. This is the strat we will use. You stand there, you stand there. Yes, you died. Oh, don't worry, no problem. I will get you up. We start again. And this is not something what you
That's
see
awesome.
in raid groups in my server. So
I just, another that's I didn't even think about like cultural differences on
Right. Right.
it. That's just not something that even crossed my mind.
yeah, it's very strange, and it's something what I think the company is vaguely aware of, because they are very reluctant to open up the cross data center travel for everyone. So it's still in the test phase where everyone can go to the Oceania data center, but you can't go anywhere else. And those guys there are quite happy to have everyone because their servers are the less populated. So anytime someone comes, they are happy that they have people to play with. But I think it would be quite unimaginable to let Europeans and Americans just flock to the Japanese data centers, because that
They're
would
nice. Let's get them.
like that would be chaos. But on the other
Well,
hand, when in an interview someone was trying to explain to the producer Yoshi P that the in-game mentor system doesn't work the best because there are a lot of toxic mentors who don't have any patience towards the newbies, and it's getting so bad that actually I'm not wearing my mentor crown anymore because I'm getting anger and hatred because of other mentors who didn't know how to behave. And
Oh,
there
wow.
should be like a different selection system for how you can become a mentor, and mentors should be monitored constantly that they are actually giving advice and help to people and not just showing off that, oh, I got a crown. And Yoshi P said that he doesn't think that there's an issue. So I think he said that based on how things are on the Japanese data center. But if I ever make it to a media tour, I would love to ask him if he is actually aware how certain parts of the game were completely different on the different regions.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that'd
well,
be interesting to see if he's got any knowledge about it, and if not, what his insights might be after learning.
yeah.
So my idea to fix this type of toxicity in the game is that I'm working on a Discord server at the moment, which is aimed to fix the issues with the in-game mentoring system. And often in game you don't really have tools to help someone or to ask for advice, because you can type in the party chat as a newbie that, sorry, I don't understand this, someone help me, but the mentor won't have time to reply to you because someone else will pull the boss.
Right. Right.
So
Oh, when you say you've got a Discord, is that so new people can go in and have conversations, or is it like a grassroots petition to fix it from the game's side?
no, it's for people to come and ask questions.
Okay, it's
So,
like an unofficial
yeah.
mentoring.
Yes.
Got it. Got it.
Yes, it is, and I want to start building it from the very casual aspects of the game. So teach people how to heal, how to tank, all those things which I didn't know when I started the game, and there was no one to help me. And I learned it the long and painful way. So I want to help people to teach them, learn it early, and then maybe help people jump up that step towards the harder content. So when they face that gatekeeping for a certain duty, they will be prepared for it, and they will
Right.
have those skills which they will need to pass through that gatekeeping. So I think it's kind of the putting my foot to hold the door.
Yeah.
No, that's
yeah,
awesome.
Exactly.
Yeah, I think it's great. Neat.
Yeah, for sure.
We'll see how it goes. I'm still building all the resources for it to actually have advice available already when people join, and then it will be all about advertising it in game and on different socials and see how it grows. But this is what I decided to put all my energy into instead of trying to raid in toxic raid groups. So I'm a filthy casual at the moment and not a raider anymore.
Well, I
Filthy
think
casual.
that's a great effort, and I think worthy of it too. Yeah, that's good luck with that.
So if any of
I
you ever wants to try Final Fantasy, I have a starting point for you.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
like
that's awesome.
a toolkit, beginner's toolkit server.
And we don't really
And
have this because we have resources for high-end raiders, and we have resources for like crafting and gathering and special little contents of the game. But because I have a friend who this is her first MMO, and she's asking me questions which I'm looking at that, oh, you didn't know this? Because they are so trivial to me, but they might not be for someone who never played an MMO or another video game before. So I'm trying to look into these areas of the game which are trivial for most people but not necessarily for newbies. And I noticed that there is quite a resource gap in some of these knowledge. So I'm trying to fill that gap.
I think that's awesome.
I think I remember talking to you, Lana, about how in your guide videos there's also toxicity aimed at guide videos because they,
Oh, yes.
it's like you're doing it wrong or you
Yeah, so that's again the toxic elitist type of
Mhm.
toxicity because in Final Fantasy 16 you have some accessories in the game. This is a single player game, so we are not playing with other people or hitting other people or anything. And there are accessories which will help you adjust the difficulty of the game a bit more between like the normal and hard mode. So for example, there's a ring which will give you a little circle timer when you need to dodge something, so you have a
Mm.
little bit more time to dodge. Or you have an accessory which will automatically apply your potions if you have potions with you, or one which will control the dog, so you don't need to give commands to the dog, you just need to focus on your character. Or another one will auto combo your skills. And I'm only using the dodging one because my eyesight is not completely perfect, so I have
Mhm.
problems sometimes with my peripheral vision, and if an attack is coming from a certain directions, I will not see that. But if I see this thing that you idiot, you need to dodge, then I will know that I need to dodge something. And this is readily provided for you in the game, and I think it's an amazing accessibility tool because people who can't use both of their hands equally good, they connect with
Yes.
these and they can just hold the controller with one hand and control the character with one hand.
That
So
that's a really interesting point. I think people, certain like elitist kind of people, they don't understand that certain settings in the game are accessibility issues. Not like I want an easy time of this, but like you said, maybe somebody doesn't have the full use of both of their hands.
Yep.
so I
Um,
Yeah, or colorblind.
yeah,
yeah, yeah.
so I constantly get comments on my videos that you are using this ring and that's cheating, and you didn't beat the
Mm-hmm.
trial in 6 minutes, you beat it in 5 minutes 50 seconds. Why do you think that you should be making a guide? uh, Dude, if you can play the
Wow.
game that good, then this guide is not for you. So
Right,
why are you
right.
here?
Yeah. Why are you watching it?
That's one thing that I won't like. Is coming into the Soulsborne games. They're very esoteric. Like they there was a back when Dark Souls first came out, amongst the games journalists, there was like between outlets, there was something they called the chain of pain, and it was an email thread of them just trying to figure out what the F is going on with this game because there are so many things that are just never explained. Like, you have to get halfway through the game and before you can unlock the ability to fast travel between bonfires, and it's called the Lord Vessel, but it doesn't tell you that that's what it is. And there's like I don't even want to say puzzles. It's just so esoteric, and part of the fun of when a new one of these comes out is the community getting together and being like, so that pendant, you can ask for a gift. You can select a gift at the beginning of the game, and the pendant verifiably does nothing. It's just there. It's like unofficial hard mode. Don't click the pendant because it won't do anything. So I would never, from being like just coming into this world like a little over a year ago, I would never do a beginner's guide because I think it would get so much hate. Like I would be like, this for me, this weapon was a great starting weapon, and then 500 people descend upon the comments to tell me and everybody watching the video that no, that is not the right starting weapon. You want to start as the barbarian with the axe. So yeah,
I don't do guides myself, and for the same reason, because I at this point I have a very specific way I play, and maybe that's not for everyone. And in my corporation, we share fits, for ships and how they get fit, and some work for you and some don't. And other people can use certain things and do really well at them, and you can try the same exact thing and do poorly at it because it's just not it doesn't fit your style. Yeah, I think that a lot of when we were talking earlier about how this would turn into a two-parter, I think it's definitely the truth. I think there's a lot of ground in this topic that needs to be that certainly would warrant another go at it at some point down the road.
Definitely think that we can continue this another time and get some more people involved from the other gaming communities on Just About,
Right,
because
right.
I definitely have more stories to tell from Final Fantasy XIV during my 5 constant years
I,
of playing.
I'm kind of curious, anyone on Just About who has experience, maybe like really hardcore Pokemon players, because I bet there's a lot of like, this is the right way to play Pokemon, this is the wrong way to play Pokemon kind of
Exactly.
mentalities. Yeah, so I
Gotta
think
be
we'd be
right.
like,
Yeah,
yeah,
that's a very good shout. I'm sure that there are like the meta Pokemons to use, and if you use
hmm
any other, then get out of here.
I know,
yes.
I know, I know. In real life, they're brutal because my boys, a couple of my boys play, that in real life at a local place, and they're brutal. So, I can only imagine what it must be like online. So yeah, it was great discussion today, and I really appreciate it. And let's look forward to, let's call this part one of an ongoing thing.
Yes, we
Yeah,
will call it part one, and thank you for joining, guys. I'm
of
definitely
course.
looking forward to the next one of this.
Yeah,
Yeah, excellent. Yeah, you guys have a great rest of your weekend, and thanks.
yeah, you too.